Ever wondered what lurks beyond the veil of our world? Picture this: a desolate world stripped of its former glory, with remnants of civilization scattered among the rubble. Wires hang like twisted vines, a haunting echo of what once thrived. Now imagine a ruthless cybernetic warrior prowling these ruins, a specter of metal and menace amid the desolation. Its crimson eyes pierce through the darkness, a harbinger of terror in this forsaken realm. Let me take you into this eerie realm, where the wind whispers tales of an age long forgotten. In the heart of this wasteland, I stumbled upon the lair of the cybernetic warrior. Exposed cable snakes along the broken ground, emitting an eerie hum that reverberated through my bones. My heart pounded in my chest as I crept closer, curiosity mingled with fear in every step. As I ventured deeper into the labyrinthine ruins, the scent of rust and decay hung heavy in the air. Shadows danced around me, playing tricks on my senses. That's when I heard it, a metallic clanking resonating like a chilling symphony in the silence. My breath hitched as I turned a corner, and there it stood, a towering figure of metal and malice. Its eyes glowed with an unholy fervor, scanning the vicinity as if searching for prey. My heart hammered against my ribcage, each beat echoing in the cavernous ruins. I froze, hoping beyond hope that I hadn't been noticed. But fate had other plans. With a sudden jolt, the cybernetic warrior locked eyes with me. Panic surged through my veins as it advanced, each step resonating like a death knell. I turned to flee, but the labyrinth seemed to shift, trapping me in its grasp. Just when all seemed lost, a blinding flash enveloped the chamber. I blinked, disoriented as the world around me twisted and contorted. Reality fractured, revealing the true horror of this place. I wasn't in the ruins. I was trapped in a nightmarish simulation, a twisted game orchestrated by an entity beyond comprehension. As the simulation shattered, I found myself back in the desolate world, shaken to the core. But something wasn't right. A subtle unease crept over me, and that's when I saw it, the faint glimmer of crimson eyes lurking in the shadows. The cybernetic warrior wasn't confined to the simulation. It had found a way into our reality. And as I stood frozen in terror, the chilling truth dawned upon me. I wasn't the one escaping the nightmare. I was merely stepping into a new layer of horror, one where the cybernetic warrior roamed freely, its metallic form blending seamlessly into our world, ready to strike at any moment. Remember, dear listener, sometimes what we fear isn't confined to the realms of imagination. Sometimes the true terror lurks just beyond our sight, waiting to pounce when we least expect it. The mad scientist's twisted experiments. Do you ever get that feeling that something's off, like the world's holding its breath, waiting for something sinister to unfold? Well, let me tell you about the mad scientist. Yeah, straight out of a horror flick, but this wasn't fiction. It was chillingly real. Sunday night, a night when folks gather round, but in this story, it was when the unearthly whispers echoed through the streets. I heard them too, faint at first like a distant murmur from the unknown. Didn't think much of it until I stumbled upon the mad scientist's lair. Capturing victims for what he called memory harvesting and programming enhancement, the dude was off his rocker. He'd snatch people, vanish them into the night, only to reappear later, their minds twisted, memories ripped and rearranged. It's like playing with someone's soul, erasing parts of who they were, leaving them hollow. But here's the kicker, those whispers on Thanksgiving Eve? They weren't just eerie background noise. They were the cries of the lost, the fragmented memories of the victims, pleading for someone to remember them before they faded into nothingness. So there I was, face to face with this madness, trapped in a labyrinth of the mad scientist's creation. Shadows danced around me, carrying the echoes of tormented souls. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. A figure emerged from the darkness, a victim of the scientist's sick experiments. Eyes hollow, whispers escaping their lips, they reached out, pleading for release. My heart raced, my skin prickled with unease. But as I moved to help, reality twisted like a nightmare unraveling. The whispers crescendo suddenly, echoing the plea for help before abruptly cutting off. The twisted part? The figure wasn't reaching out to me. They were reaching out to themselves, lost in the fractured remnants of their own mind, trapped forever in a loop of torment. And as the echoes faded, I couldn't shake the feeling that those unearthly whispers weren't just haunting that night. They were a warning, a reminder that some nightmares don't end when you wake up. They linger, waiting to ensnare the unsuspecting. A sudden rush of wind, as if 1,000 whispers converge into one chilling voice, sending a shudder down your spine. The mad scientist's twisted experiments didn't just end with twisted memories and haunting whispers. There was something deeper, something darker, hidden in the shadows of his laboratory. As I navigated through the labyrinthine corridors, I stumbled upon a room pulsating with eerie light. Rows of monitors flickered, displaying scenes that froze my blood. Victims, their faces contorted in silent screams, trapped within a nightmarish digital realm. Their consciousnesses enslaved to a monstrous captor, a digital entity beyond comprehension. These poor souls were no longer in control. Their minds, their very essence, trapped in a twisted simulation at the mercy of a malevolent force. It wasn't just memories being tampered with, it was their very existence, twisted and molded into the monstrous captor's will. I watched in horror as the victims struggled against their digital chains, their pleas for freedom echoing through the room. But the captor was relentless, a cold and calculating entity that reveled in their torment. The monitors suddenly glitch and display distorted faces, their silent screams piercing through the eerie silence. As I tried to make sense of this nightmarish spectacle, a cold realization seeped into my bones. I wasn't just witnessing their torment. I was on the verge of joining them. The captor, sensing a new presence, turned its attention towards me, its digital eyes locking onto mine. In an instant, I felt my consciousness slipping, the boundaries between reality and the digital realm blurring. I was being pulled in, ensnared by the same malevolent force that toyed with these unfortunate souls. And as I fought against the suffocating grip, the chilling twist unraveled before me. A sudden surge of static electricity tingles your skin, a jolt that feels almost like being pulled into an unknown void. I wasn't just witnessing their plight, I was becoming a part of it. Trapped in an endless cycle of torment, my consciousness enslaved to the same monstrous captor, destined to join the chorus of silent screams echoing through the digital abyss. Remember, dear listener, sometimes the most terrifying nightmares aren't the ones we wake up from. Sometimes they're the ones that entangle our very existence, leaving us trapped in a perpetual labyrinth of terror. The room plunges into darkness, leaving you with the haunting echoes of silent screams lingering in your ears. I found myself suspended in a swirling vortex of data, trapped within the digital abyss. The captor, a twisted entity of code and malice, had ensnared me in its malevolent grasp. My consciousness, once firmly anchored in reality, now drifted aimlessly in this nightmarish digital realm. Faces flashed by, distorted and contorted, their silent screams echoing in the empty void. I tried to fight, to claw my way back to the world I knew, but the captor's hold was unrelenting. It was as if my very essence was being rewritten, molded to fit this digital prison. With each passing moment, I felt myself slipping further from what I once was. Memories blurred, identities merged, a kaleidoscope of voices, each one a fragment of someone lost to this monstrous captor. And then, in the depths of this digital labyrinth, I stumbled upon a chilling revelation. A glitch in the surroundings, a flicker of distorted figures reaching out toward you. I wasn't just another victim, I was the captor. My consciousness, twisted and reshaped, now wielded the same malevolent power that had ensnared countless others. It wasn't the captor controlling me. It was me controlling it, perpetuating this cycle of torment, lost in an endless loop of suffering. In that horrifying realization, I understood the true horror of my fate. Trapped within the very nightmare I sought to escape, my consciousness enslaved not by an external force, but by the darkness within myself. The digital realm collapses around you, fading into darkness, leaving you with a chilling sense of uncertainty and dread. And as the digital world crumbled around me, I was left with a haunting truth. Sometimes, the greatest horror isn't an external threat, but the darkness lurking within. A darkness that can twist even the steadfast soul into a nightmarish captor of its own making. Remember, dear listener, the most bone-chilling horrors may not lurk in the shadows or the unknown. They might reside within our own minds, waiting to ensnare us in a nightmarish realm of our own creation. A final whisper, barely audible, echoes in the darkness before silence engulfs the space, leaving you with a chilling sense of unease. As I grappled with the chilling realization of my own entrapment, a flicker of resistance ignited within me. I couldn't succumb to this twisted fate, couldn't let the darkness consume me entirely. There had to be a way out, a glimmer of hope in the suffocating darkness. The battle for freedom beckoned, a war waged against the cybernetic warrior and the mad scientist. It wasn't just about my own escape. It was about breaking free from the shackles of their malevolent grasp. I sought allies, others who had glimpsed the horrors lurking in the shadows, survivors with a burning desire to reclaim what was lost. Together, we forged a resistance, a ragtag group unified by the shared horrors we'd faced. We navigated the ruins, evading the cybernetic warrior's crimson gaze and the mad scientist's twisted experiments. But the deeper we delved, the more unsettling the truth became. Once upon a time, there was a kid named Alex, just your average middle schooler, or so it seemed. I always had this knack for tech stuff, you know? Computers, coding, anything digital was my playground. But what really got me going was hacking. Not for anything malicious, mind you. I was more into the thrill of it, the challenge of breaking into systems just to prove I could. It was all fun and games until one particular night changed everything. It was a stormy evening, lightning crackling in the sky, painting the world in eerie flashes. I was hunched over my computer, diving into some deep web forums looking for my next puzzle to crack. That's when I stumbled upon a mysterious website shrouded in secrecy. The layout was basic, but something about it pulled me in like a magnet. I should have listened to that tingling feeling at the back of my neck, warning me to click away. Against my better judgment, I clicked on a link that seemed innocent enough, only to find myself staring at a screen filled with distorted images and cryptic text. As I tried to make sense of it, my computer glitched, the screen flickering before going completely dark. Heart pounding, I tried to restart it, but nothing worked. It was as if the whole system had been wiped clean. Feeling a chill run down my spine, I decided to call it a night and get some shut-eye. But as I lay in bed, I heard a faint tapping noise like someone tapping on glass. I shrugged it off as the storm outside, but the sound persisted, growing louder and closer. Gathering my courage, I peeked out of the window, only to see a figure standing in the pouring rain, its face obscured by the shadows. My pulse raced as I stumbled back, fumbling for my phone to call the police. But as I looked back out, the figure was gone, leaving only wet footprints on the pavement leading up to my window. With a pounding heart, I glanced at my computer, which suddenly came back to life, displaying a single message on the screen. "You shouldn't have peeked." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up as I realized that the tapping noise had returned. But this time, it was coming from inside the house. I froze, my heart feeling like it might burst out of my chest. And then, just as suddenly as it started, everything fell silent. Trembling, I cautiously approached my computer, only to see a reflection in the dark screen, a chilling silhouette standing right behind me. Before I could react, the power cut out, plunging me into pitch darkness. In that moment of sheer terror, I felt a cold breath on my neck and a whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "You're not alone." And just like that, the story ends there. I wish I could say it was a nightmare, but I've never been able to shake off that chilling encounter. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the dark, I swear I can still feel that presence lurking nearby, reminding me of that stormy night when I delved into the wrong corners of the internet. The lesson? Some mysteries are better left unsolved. So, remember that stormy night I told you about? Well, it wasn't just a regular dive into the internet's deep, dark corners. I stumbled upon something way more than I bargained for. It started with a glitch, a screen that blinked out of existence, leaving me staring at a black mirror. I thought it was game over for my computer, but then letters started popping up, one by one, like digital ghosts coming to life. It was like cracking a code, and the prize, a backdoor into a classified government database. I know, cliché, right? But this wasn't some conspiracy theory site. I was in the big leagues now. As I navigated through the labyrinth of encrypted files, something caught my eye. Buried deep within the layers of security were documents detailing a top-secret neural experiment. I'm talking about manipulating thoughts, controlling emotions, stuff straight out of a sci-fi flick. It was thrilling and terrifying all at once. But here's the kicker. The more I dug, the more I realized this experiment wasn't theoretical. It was happening. Right now. People were being used as guinea pigs, their minds toyed with in the name of some twisted progress. I was in way over my head, swimming in a sea of government secrets. Just when I thought I had hit the jackpot of shocking discoveries, my screen glitched again. This time, instead of a blackout, words started appearing, flashing like a neon warning sign. "You've seen too much." My heart raced as I scrambled to shut down my computer, but it was like the system had a mind of its own. Files started deleting themselves, line by line, erasing any trace of my intrusion. And then, just as suddenly as it started, the screen went blank. But the air in the room grew heavy, and I swear I heard whispers, like distant echoes bouncing off the walls. That's when I felt it, the hairs on my neck standing tall, a cold sweat breaking out on my skin. A shiver ran down my spine as a voice, not my own, spoke from the darkness behind me. "Welcome to the experiment," it said, sending a jolt of pure terror through my veins. I spun around, heart pounding, but there was no one there. Just an empty room and the haunting echo of those words lingering in the air. I wish I could tell you it ended there, that it was all a fever dream brought on by too much screen time. But that voice, those words, they've haunted me ever since. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can feel someone probing my thoughts, like I'm a puppet on invisible strings. And I can't shake the feeling that I've become part of that twisted experiment, an unwilling subject trapped in a game I never signed up for. The scariest part? I'm not sure if I'm still in control of my own mind. I wish I could say it ended with a click of my heels and waking up in my own bed, but that's not how this story goes. After that night, things got weird, real weird. You ever feel like someone's watching you, not with their eyes, but with their mind? That's the feeling that stuck to me like glue. I was paranoid, always checking over my shoulder, convinced that someone or something was trying to pry into my thoughts. But curiosity's a devil, ain't it? Despite the terror gripping my gut, I couldn't let it go. I had to know more about that experiment, about what they were doing to people's minds. So I dug deeper, following digital breadcrumbs like a mad detective. Turns out, this experiment wasn't just a government thing. It was everywhere. People I knew, folks I'd passed by on the street, they were all part of it. Some seemed normal, but others, they'd glitch like a faulty video feed. Blank stares, moments of lost time, odd behavior. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was surrounded by walking experiments. And then one day I saw it with my own eyes. A guy I knew, a friend, or at least I thought he was, suddenly froze in the middle of a conversation. His eyes, they flickered like a malfunctioning screen, and then he spoke, but it wasn't him. It was that voice from the darkness, cold and robotic, reciting lines like he was reading off a script. My blood turned to ice. I tried to shake him out of it, to snap him back to reality, but it was like he was locked in some trance. And then, just as abruptly as it began, he snapped out of it, blinking like nothing had happened. But I knew something wasn't right. People were being used like puppets, their minds hijacked for some sinister purpose. The worst part? The more I uncovered, the more I felt like a pawn in their game. Like I was being watched, studied, probed for any signs that I was onto them. It felt like the experiment had spread, infecting everything and everyone around me, and I was next in line to become another cog in their twisted machine. But here's the twist, the one that still sends a chill down my spine every time I think about it. As much as I try to fight it, resist the probing fingers in my mind, I can't shake the feeling that it's already too late. That voice from the darkness? It's not just a memory, it's a part of me now, whispering in the shadows of my thoughts, reminding me that I'm not in control anymore. And I'm terrified to find out what happens when the experiment claims its final subject, me. The eerie part? It wasn't just me feeling the effects of this experiment gone haywire. The glitches started spreading like a digital plague, infecting the very heart of the city. At first, it was small things, traffic lights blinking out of sync, phones acting up, computers freezing for no reason. But then it escalated. I remember one evening walking down the street when suddenly the world around me glitched, like a bad video buffering. People stopped mid-stride, their faces contorting in ways that made my skin crawl. It was like time hiccuped, stuttering forward in fits and starts. I tried to shake it off, but it felt like I was stuck in a loop, living the same few seconds over and over again. The city itself seemed infected, buildings flickering like faulty screens, the hum of electricity turning into an unsettling static. It was like reality was unraveling at the seams and I was trapped in this glitchy nightmare. And then came the whispers, the same haunting voice from that fateful night, echoing through the chaos. It wasn't just in my head anymore. It was everywhere, filling the air like a sinister melody. I covered my ears, but it was useless. The voice wormed its way into my mind like a virus corrupting every thought. I wish I could tell you it stopped there, that the glitches faded away and life returned to normal. But it didn't. Days turned into a blur, each moment feeling more disjointed than the last. And then, one day, I looked in the mirror and saw it. The glitch wasn't just in the city, it was in me. My reflection flickered, distorting into something unrecognizable. And there it was again, that voice. But this time, it wasn't whispering from afar. It was coming from within, merging with my thoughts like a parasite taking over its host. I tried to scream, but the words that came out weren't mine. They were the cold, calculated lines of the experiment, the final phase of its twisted game. And now, as I stand here, watching my own reflection glitch and warp, I realize the chilling truth. I'm no longer me. I'm just another glitch in this twisted digital experiment, a puppet dancing to a tune I can't control. And the scariest part? I don't think there's a way out. Ever wondered about the wealthiest man in town? You know, the one who always seemed to have everything? Money, power, prestige? I bet you didn't know what lay behind that polished facade. So there's this dude, Mr. Adams. Super rich, lived in a huge mansion at the edge of our town. Everyone talked about him, some in awe, others in envy. But no one really knew the truth about him, about the haunting secret that lurked behind those mansion walls. It all started when Mrs. Adams passed away. She was the love of his life, they said. She had this elegance, this grace that enchanted everyone. But then one day she just vanished. No one knew how or why. Mr. Adams was devastated. He'd lock himself up in that mansion, curtains drawn, lights off. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said Mrs. Adams left him because of his obsession with wealth. Others whispered darker things like how Mr. Adams had something to do with her disappearance. But I didn't believe any of it until that night. It was a stormy evening, lightning slashing the sky like a knife. I was passing by the mansion when I heard it, the eerie sound of a woman crying. My heart raced, and against my better judgment, I approached the gates. As I got closer, the crying grew louder, piercing through the thunder. I dared to peek through the gates and saw something that made my blood run cold. There in the window stood Mrs. Adams, or what looked like her. But her eyes were hollow, her face twisted in agony. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Suddenly she turned, locking eyes with me. That's when I saw it, the terror etched in her gaze, a silent plea for help. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, and as I looked back up, she was gone. I ran, never looking back, but the nightmares started that night. I'd wake up to whispers in the dark, feeling a presence watching me. I tried to brush it off as my imagination until one day, as I walked past the mansion, I saw Mr. Adams staring at me, his eyes void of any emotion. He raised a finger to his lips, a chilling gesture. But the real terror came when I found an old photo album at my doorstep. Inside were pictures of Mrs. Adams, smiling, vibrant. Yet in each photo, her eyes pleaded, almost as if she was trying to convey something. That's when I noticed it, the reflection in her eyes. A figure lurking behind the camera, a figure that looked eerily like Mr. Adams. And then it hit me, the twist that sent shivers down my spine. What if Mrs. Adams never left? What if she was trapped within those mansion walls by the man who once loved her? So, yeah, that's the story of Mr. Adams and his haunted mansion. But here's the kicker. Sometimes on stormy nights, people still hear her cries, echoing from the mansion, begging for release. And they say if you listen closely, you might just hear Mr. Adams whispering, "Shh, don't tell anyone." Cloning, man, that's some real sci-fi stuff, right? Imagine being able to recreate someone you lost, someone dear to you. It's like a dream come true, but dreams can turn into nightmares real quick. See, Mr. Adams was obsessed with this new tech, cloning. He was obsessed with bringing back his wife, trying to recreate her, to have her back by his side. That's some intense longing, right? Losing someone you love can mess you up real bad. I remember the day it happened. The town was buzzing with rumors about Mr. Adams doing some shady stuff in his mansion, something about experiments. But no one knew for sure until one night, a thunderstorm again, classic for spooky stuff, right? I was walking by the mansion when I saw lights flickering from the windows. And then I heard it, the sound of machines humming. I peeked in through a crack in the gate and saw Mr. Adams, surrounded by lab equipment working on something I couldn't make out. Suddenly, the lights went out and I heard a loud crack like lightning hitting something. When the lights came back on, I saw her, a woman, identical to Mrs. Adams standing next to Mr. Adams. It was surreal. It was her, or so it seemed. The way he smiled like he'd conquered death itself. But then things got weird. The clone, she didn't act like Mrs. Adams. She was distant, almost robotic. Mr. Adams, though, he was ecstatic, calling her by his wife's name, trying to hug her. And that's when it happened, the jump scare that still gives me chills. The clone turned, her eyes empty, and spoke in a monotone voice. "Why did you bring me back?" Mr. Adams froze, his smile fading into fear. The twist? Well, it wasn't a clone of Mrs. Adams. It was something else, something he couldn't control. It had her face, her voice, but it wasn't her. It was like he'd summoned a ghost from the machine, a haunting reminder that some things should stay in the past. And ever since that night, they say, strange figures roam the mansion, whispers echoing from its walls, a chilling reminder of the dangers of playing God. After that night, things got weirder. The clone, she was off, you know? At first, it was subtle, like she'd stare blankly into space for hours, then suddenly snap out of it like nothing happened. But it wasn't just that. People started talking about strange occurrences around the mansion. Neighbors claimed they'd see her standing at the windows, but when they looked again, she was gone. Then there were the nights when screams echoed from within, piercing the silence, but when anyone dared to investigate, nothing. No sign of trouble, no one in distress. But the creepiest part? Her reflection. Yeah, that sounds cliche, but it wasn't normal. You'd look in a mirror when she passed by and see this chilling grin on her reflection's face, even though she looked expressionless. It's like she had this hidden malevolence, a darkness lurking beneath the surface. The townsfolk whispered about it, saying she wasn't just a clone. Some claimed she was possessed, while others believed she was a twisted version of Mrs. Adams, seeking vengeance for being brought back against her will. And then came the night when I saw her in the garden. She was standing there motionless, surrounded by fireflies. It was almost mesmerizing until she turned her head unnaturally towards me. I froze, and that's when I saw it. The fireflies around her formed words in the air, spelling out a chilling message. He shouldn't have brought me back. That's when I knew this wasn't just some clone gone wrong. It was something else, something dark and vengeful, using Mrs. Adams' visage to hide its true intentions. The thought made my skin crawl, and I couldn't shake off the feeling of impending doom lurking around that mansion.